Hello viewers, welcome to Top Notch TV. With you today is teacher Emis Jabani, a teacher of English and Literature, an examiner, as well as an author. This session we are going to look at our last story in the anthology of short stories, A Silent Song and Other Short Stories. And we are going to look at the story Cheque Mate by Kevin Baldeosingh. So who is Kelvin? Who is this author who has written this story Cheque Mate? So he was born in Trinidad, and clearly that's where the story is set. So he was born in Trinidad in the year 1963. He was a newspaper columnist as well as a humanist involved in many social issues, and he has worked as a journalist for over 25 years. So our learners, this session we are going to look at the plot analysis of this short story, Cheque Mate, and obviously we are going to do it our way, that is the episodic way. So here we can say that we have 2 or 3 episodes. We have divided this story into 3 episodes. The first one is at the bank. The second episode is at Sukriya's apartment, and then the other one is inside Rando's office. So at the bank, we look at what happens at the bank. Sukriya is a corporate secretary in Rando's company. This is a company that Rando and actually inherited from his father, and he was the CEO or he was running this company. So who is Sukriya? Sukriya is a corporate secretary of Rando's company, and this is a company that Rando had inherited from his father. So when she began just like a mere lawyer, because she had done law as a first degree, but she later on advanced her studies and did accounting. So she was promoted later into an accountant or a corporate secretary by Rando, and also salary had to go up. So at the beginning of this story, we see Sukriya at the bank, a local bank in Trinidad, going to deposit some checks. So these were some of the checks that she had received from the company that were in her name, and so she was going to deposit them in a local savings account in Trinidad. So we are told that every time they engaged in any business transaction, she would get like a kickback from the company that were paid to her directly through use of check. Rando did not believe in electronic means. He did not believe in technology. So he always believed that paying in check was the right way to go. He had read so much about cyber crimes, as well as watched enough movies to know that actually someone can easily clear his business account. So to avoid that, he had always opted for the analog way. So he paid people using checks. On this particular day, she was going to deposit check. But before I go that, let me mention that she could be paid depending on the kind of business that they engaged in. If it was a local business with local investors, then the pay would come in form of Trinidad dollars. If it was an international investor, then Sukriya would receive checks in the US dollars. So now she didn't like going to the bank. So she would hold on to these checks for some months before carrying all of them to the bank to go and deposit them. So she got into this habit of putting all the checks that were in the US dollars and all the checks that were in the Trinidad dollars in the same drawer. So on this particular day, she was going to deposit the checks that were in the Trinidad dollars, because these ones are deposited in Trinidad into a savings account that she uses to pay the mortgage for her apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, as well as pay monthly bills and utilities. Then she had another international account in Cayman Island, where she would fly after every 2 months to go and deposit all her checks that were in the US currency. So on this particular day, she was going to deposit the local checks. But there was this particular check. She had 8 checks in number, but there was this particular check that she did not check twice because of the amount of money that was indicated there. It was 5 million. So without thinking, she assumed there is no way it can be 5 million US dollars, because 5 million US dollars is such a huge sum of money for Randall to give her. So she just assumed that it is 5 million Trinidad dollars, which cannot raise eyebrows. So she carried all the checks to the bank, and as she deposited, it is the clerk at the bank actually who made her aware that one of the checks was in US currency, that is US dollars. So she is shocked, and she decides to play cool because she does not want to expose a business, and she does not want to deal with the manager, because the manager will put 1 + 1 together and come with some educated guesses. So why is she afraid? First of all, why is she afraid of dealing with the manager? We are told that Sukia gets 50,000 as a monthly salary, and that is the monthly salary that is on the books, and that is taxable, and this money goes directly into a savings account. So if you are to check a savings account, the money that goes there, genuine money that goes there, is 50,000 Trinidad dollars every month. But we are told in a duration of 6-7 years, she had accumulated lots of savings, that she was now talking about millions of money in a savings account. So she was afraid that this manager will be able to wonder how a person who gets 50,000 Trinidad dollars is able to accumulate all this huge amount of money in just 6 years. So to avoid that kind of scrutiny, she avoids dealing directly with the manager and just deposits money and lets it stay there. If it's not paying the mortgage and other monthly utilities, the money is just left there because she has no other expenses that she can use the money for. Reason being, everything else that has to do with her is paid for by the company. So even the clothes that she wears, going to the salon, everything is paid for using the company's credit card. So let's go back now to an incident with the clerk. So the clerk advises her, can we open the US dollar account so that you deposit this check? That's when it hits her. What do you mean? And then the clerk tells her that the check that you have here is of 5 million US dollars. If it is converted to Trinidad dollars, then it is 30.2 Trinidad dollars, and we can't just deposit that amount of money into a savings account unless we open a US dollar account for you. And of course, if that happens, she has to provide the sources of that money. So she plays it cool and tells the clerk that she would be back the following day to open the US dollar account. But that was not the case. It came as a shock to Sukia. She's wondering, why would Randall write her such a huge or a hefty check for no apparent reason? So she deposits the rest of the checks and heads back home to with plans to go and actually approach Randall and get answers to all the questions that were going through her mind. And now that takes us to our second episode at the apartment. So throughout, we are taken in details description of her car, of all the material possessions that she had. She was a rich girl. She was someone who was actually amongst the highest paid in the country. So she was even driving a new Audi SUV, and we are told all that has been paid for by the company. So she gets to her apartment, and before she gets to her apartment, she's actually considering or deliberating between, should I keep this money and keep quiet about it, deposit the check and keep quiet about it, or should I go back to the office and ask Randall to explain what this money is about. So she's actually thinking about how depositing that money will actually help her investments in London. She can actually do some repairs in some of her houses in London and so on. But she decides to actually find out from Lando what the money was for first before depositing the check. So she goes back to her house because she intends to change. She says that she needs to confirm that actually all the calculations and all the mathematics actually tally, as well as change so that she can go and see Randall looking professional. So she goes to her office, gets into a study, and logs into a computer, and according to her, all the mathematics, all the details, all the dates, all the amounts tally, so there is nothing that looks amiss. She then takes all the checks, the local checks, the international checks, and decides that she should compare them and sees that actually everything tallies, nothing looks amiss, and then decides to find answers from Randall. She goes, changes into her money blue suit and a pink camisole, and then decides that instead of carrying all the check, maybe she can carry just one. And that is now, when looking at the checks spread all over her study table, that is when now the problem or realization hits her. She realizes that there's something wrong, and it was such a small detail that it was very difficult for someone to point out on a first glance. So she sees that there's something wrong with these checks, and that's when she notices that the signatures don't match. Every check has a different signature. They are very close to Randall's signature, but they are different. Also, the one that was closest to his official signature was the check with now 5 million, but still there was some slight difference between that check, the signature on that check, and Randall's official signature. So armed with that information, now she carries all the checks and goes to. She had earlier on booked an appointment with Margaret, that is Randall's secretary, so that she can talk to Randall during lunchtime. So when she gets to Randall's office, now that takes us to our third episode. And when she gets there, we are told that Randall was a serious person who does not actually believe in niceties and so on. So he believes in going straight to the point, and so does Sukiya. So he asks her what help can he be, and then or how can he help her, and Sukiya goes straight to the point and asks him why he had written him that check. Randall first of all smiles and says, I thought you had already accepted the money and deposited the check. But anyway, since you're here, he tells her the truth. Since you're here, it's on the books, it's appreciation for the good work you've done with the no deal. And off the books, it's to buy your loyalty, keep your mouth shut. So Sukiya is wondering, why do I have to keep my mouth shut? Yeah, it is her work to draw the contracts for the company. It is a work to come up with the contracts, but everything she wrote on that contract, on that deal, the information came from Randall. So he was the one who gave her the price ranges for the shares, and what Randall gave her is what she quoted on the contract. Now she's wondering, why does she have to keep her mouth shut? That's when now Randall explains to her that actually, yes, you quoted the figures that I gave you, but technically that figure undervalued the value for the shares by 50%, and that is what is called fraud. So Sukiya is like, okay, fine, it undervalues the shares and it's fraud, but aren't you also incriminated in this kind of all incriminating yourself also as well, because both our signatures are there? And Randall says that she is the one who draws the contract. It is not him who draws the contract. So clearly Sukiya now begins to understand what is going on there. So she gives him all the other checks and talks about the signature, and Randall laughs at her. Randall is like, yes, even the signature that you're saying is closely similar to mine is actually not. Randall tells Sukiya that the company is on the verge of going bankruptcy. So to save himself, he ended up being the clever one. How is he the clever one? Sukiya remembers at some point where they had lots of documents they were signing, Randall's pen ran out of ink and he borrowed Sukiya's pen and he has never returned it. You see those signature pens that can be associated with an individual. So he borrowed Sukiya's pen and he has never returned it. So he has been used Sukiya's pen to forge his own signature. So according to when investigations are if investigations are carried out, it will look like Sukiya used her own pen to forge Randall's signature. So Randall says that since the company is on the verge of going bankrupt, then he had to save his own skin. In case the auditors come and investigations are carried out, it will look like other people, someone like Sukiya, are the people who committed fraud and they're the reason why the company was going bankrupt. So it hits Sukiya so hard, the betrayal is so strong that she even starts crying. So Randall actually, in a sarcastic way, tells her not to worry because the people in the court don't understand financial matters and so the case will not go far. But he also tries to exploit her or the situation that she was in because now she was vulnerable, and we are told that in the past he had actually made advances on her, but he had actually denied, refused to give in to his advances. But now she could see that he was looking at her camisole, and she takes advantage of that situation to beg him to help her. That is now when he realized that she was vulnerable and he tries to exploit her sexually by telling her to go where he was and kneel down before him. So unknowingly to Randall, Sukiya was recording all that with the iPhone. So when the iPhone beeps, she takes it out and presses a button, and Randall could hear himself talking about on the books, this is the money to appreciate you for the Medano deal. Off the records, then this is the money to keep your mouth shut. So he had actually incriminated himself by speaking without knowing that it was being recorded. So now at the end, Sukiya has the upper hand. He has this recording that is incriminating Randall, and so Randall is now feeling, for the first time, he stands feeling hopeless because he is at the mercy of Sukiya. So Sukiya goes and sits on a windowsill and tells him to go and kneel in front of Mistress, and thus the title Checkmate. Now let's looking at the plot analysis. How relevant is this title Checkmate to our story? So you can look at two approaches to say that the title is relevant. One, the title is symbolic. It is symbolic of the game of chess. The game of chess where all through Randall thought that he had an upper hand, and that he could actually control Sukiya and actually at the end of it all emerge victorious. But at the end of the game, Sukiya gives him a checkmate. She turns the whole episode or the whole thing around by just using over what? A recording. That's checkmate in reference to the game of chess. We can also say that it is suitable to the story because it is checkmate with the spelling of the check, that financial document or financial book. So Randall believed in pain for every deal using a check because check were the safest method according to him of paying his employees. We can also argue from that, and since he insisted on paying checks and Sukiya had so many checks, both international and local checks that she needed to deposit, and the story revolves around checks that were actually a source of forgery where Randall would forge his own signature. So the whole story is revolving around checks that are used by Randall to pay his employees. So we can also say from that perspective or that angle that the title is also relevant to the story. So that marks the end of our first episode, plot analysis and how relevant the title is to the story. Then we are going to have another episode where we are going to look at the issues that emerge in this story, as well as one of the essays that we have on this English guru, an essay from the Story Cheque Mate. Until next time, bye bye.